Hi all, let's have a look at another amazing game from the Sinquefield Cup. Levon Aronian was playing against Wesley So. So this is in round 6. D4 from Levon. We see knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, sidestepping the Nimzo Indian defense. This is Queen's Indian territory. d5, knight c3, and then we get a hybrid system. It looks like a cross between a Queen's Gambit declined and a Nimzo Indian. It's called the Ragozin defense. So knight f3, bishop b4, the Ragozin. Named after a great player, Ragozin. Bishop g5, and white usually snaps off the knight here. And now this check is played, which interrupts black from playing c5 in a hurry to try and save that bishop. So little positional nuance. So black's been kind of forced into a Ragozin style position, basically, with this queen a4 check. Now e3, black castles, bishop e2. Black gives up his centre pawn there. White is not immediately taking it. Black takes on c3. B takes now bishop d7, and there is a threat here of knight takes d4 to address, hitting the bishop, and that is addressed with queen takes c4. So here it looks as though, yeah, it's a little bit uncomfortable, this position for black. If you look, it's difficult to put pressure on the center. White is kind of rock solid in this position. We have rook ac8, as though maybe later the knight's going to move than the c pawn. But for the moment, rook ad1, rook fd8, knight d2. Yeah, white's position looks absolutely rock solid. Knight a5, queen b4 hitting the knight. That's protected, which does mean potentially c5 later. But for the moment, bishop a6 is played, a forcing move, putting the rook rather awkwardly on b8. Now a tempo gain. Queen f5, bishop d3 in the firing line here, but that's not a concern. Bishop c6, there's nothing really to use the discovered attack on the queen for. So actually we see just the move f3, and in this position black took on e4, which gives white a dangerous looking e-file. So one question is, what can black do here? He actually took, it seems rather committal to take on e4. What about just rerouting the knight? That does seem, there's an idea that if you have a bad piece, try and improve it. You know, maybe this is, it looks equalish actually, it looks technically equalish. It seems this move here maybe the start of giving white something which unintended. White did go for this f file, and it's uncomfortable. Queen g5. Now with this f file, the rooks can double here potentially, but we have a dual purpose move defending e3 whilst doubling. c5 finally. That c pawn has been liberated from before. The queen goes to b2 to help not only defend the centre potentially, but also it can help treble on the f file via the f2 square. So that's a very clever maneuver here, b2 to f2 potentially. We have e5, and now rook df1. So supporting the centre is useful here, now that the rooks are doubling there. We have c takes d4, c takes d4. Black doesn't want to undouble this pawn, it seems. Black played now rook b7. And now we have the move d5, which makes the knight feel a bit odd maybe. It's taken away a square from the knight. Rook c7 is played. And now white tries to lure the queen away from protecting that centre pawn with h4. White's trying to get an advantage of centre pawns here. And you might think, well, actually, couldn't that pawn be protected with queen e7? That's interrupting the rook, which means actually this position, it's not actually that bad to lose 2 rooks for a queen. This didn't happen. But this position, you can see that the pawns have potential mobility. If we have a look at this position, it's quite good for white with d6 coming later, and then e5, and then the bishop's quite dangerous. So that's avoided really after this h4 by black. Just leaving that protection of f7 with the rook. We have queen takes e5 hitting the rook, queen e7, queen g3, again renewing rook f7 now. That queen moves out of the way for f7 to be defended by the rook, and tries to tie white down to e3. Seems fairly logical. But now this dynamic aggressive potential is used in this position. This seems to be a very accurate attacking move played here. I wonder if you can guess it. If I give you 5 seconds to pause the video here, what would you play with black? With white, sorry, white's play. What would you play with white here? Okay, in the game, rook f6 is played. Possibly this is one of the most accurate moves in the position. Let's just do a technical check here. Yes, this is the most accurate technical move in the position. The threat here is clearly rook takes h6, but how difficult it is to parry that. If king h7, I think we just drop f7, end of game. If g6, here e5, and then to smash the pawn chain up with bishop g6 is on the cards. So say takes, bishop takes, and that's pretty devastating. It's going to be pretty devastating. So queen f4, and it's nasty. We're coming in with queen f6 check, and yeah, it's not worth checking much more than this. Massacre. So yeah, this is carrying with it a lot of dangerous implications. King move fails, g6 kind of fails to e5. Very dangerous move. Black trying to defend the pawn by moving it. So we have h5. And now another accurate move, just chasing this pawn actually. Can you guess how to chase this pawn most effectively? I mean, it is one of the most accurate moves in the position again. Okay, rook h6, yeah, using the pin to chase that pawn. Now here again, if g6, actually even stronger than e5, although e5 is strong, this is actually even stronger with rook takes f7 here. This is vicious stuff. So if takes check, and it's very, very bad. If king h7, e5, unleashing the bishop. This is a forced mate in 6, apparently. Yeah. If say check, it's a spite check. Then what? We're just waiting to be mated here, for example, like this. Yeah, so basically rook h6, g6 is really out of the question. So we see the move queen c3 hitting the bishop. But now, interestingly, yet another fantastic looking attacking move is played here, which happens to be the most accurate move, it seems, in the position, at least at a certain depth here that I've got. Seems to be the most accurate attacking move. What does white play in this position? So the bishop seems to be attacked. What do you want to do here? If I give you 5 seconds starting from now. Okay, in fact the bishop isn't moved, so the bishop is moved. Black's still in a difficult way actually, even if the bishop is moved and the pawn's taken. But even stronger, that's still an advantage for white. He just leaves the bishop there. He plays rook takes h5, rather cheeky. Just leaving the bishop there. Just using that bishop as an extra tempo, basically. Now black didn't take the bishop. Wesley So played g6. So this is begging the question really, what happens if the bishop is taken? What can you see in this position? There is a move which is really crushing. Okay, queen h4, leaving even e3 to be taken with check. but it's threatening this mate, and also d8, which would also pick up c7. So if black goes with this check and tries to shield the diagonal, and it seems to be dual purpose to avoid getting mated and shielding, there's a problem here after rook h8 check, king f7. Can you see what the problem is? There's a slight snag in the position, unfortunately. Otherwise this would be maybe useful for black, this variation, but it's not. White can play, if I give you 5 seconds here, white can smash through where rook takes f6, unfortunately for black, because if takes queen h7 is checkmate. Yeah, the pawn's covering the escape square there, and if king e7, that walks into a double discovered check, and this gets mated after the check here, encouraging the pawn to weaken the second rank. Queen takes g6 is mate. Also I believe queen h7 is checkmate as well. There's a choice. So basically this bishop is not taken for the reason of queen h4, it seems. So g6 is played, but now again g6 actually protects h8 from afar, so setting a trap actually in a way if white wants to casually play queen h4 here, maybe to at least try and pick up the rook with check. Let's have a look. So it's protecting h8. If queen h4, actually even this position is good for white. Even this position, it's just a very strong position. But a stronger move seems to have been played, e5, and the game ended here. If we have a look at this final position, if queen takes d3, queen h4 is strong actually, even though the rook can be taken. This is good, for example, even just taking the rook, or even e6. So that's pretty strong. But even stronger than queen h4 here is just rook h3, it seems, the quiet rook h3. I'm not sure this was necessarily the intention, although this seems a bit too subtle to calculate, and it's got the killer idea of queen h4 coming up next. But you know, maybe this was the intention. Rook f8, for example, queen h4. Now that there's no way of reaching h8, there's two mate threats. Well, maybe it's not that difficult to find. Rook h3. So this is just killing, it seems, as a forced. Well, it's an absolute winning position. The exchange up with multiple threats. It's actually technically a forced checkmate here in 12. But anyway, so yeah. So we just look at this position again. Queen h4 is a winning move, but it seems stronger is in fact a rook move. In fact, even rook h2 is very strong. Even rook h2. Just reserving queen h4, basically. I mean, you might think this is strange that white's a piece down, but this knight's not exactly relevant to this sector of the board. It might as well not be on the board here as far as the king side action is concerned. So this final position is kind of fascinating. If rook takes d5, queen h3 threatening, for example, queen h8 checkmate, black would actually have to give up the rook, give up the queen, it seems, with queen takes f1. If king f8 check, and here there's a mate in 3 in this line actually. I wonder if you can spot it. Another tactical test. Can you spot it? A mate in 3. Okay. Rook takes f7. Rook h7. And queen f6 checkmate. Yeah, it seems this is a very interesting position to analyze, this final position. So it wasn't played out. But yeah, it seems rook h3 is winning. Rook h2 is winning. Queen h4 is winning. And there's also another one even. d6, which can be just used as a prelude to either rook h3 or rook h2, it's all pretty winning. Even queen g5. But yeah, it's just amazing. Yeah, black's not in a position really to do anything. His rooks are also tied down. The knight's just miles and miles away. Yeah, so when all the pieces are away, yeah, these are big threats to handle. So a fascinating. It seems artistic game. Another sort of artistic game from Levon Aronian. If we go back to the final position, he seems to be creating works of art here in the Sinquefield Cup. Okay, comments, questions, likes, shares appreciated. Thanks very much. Thanks very much.